for the hardest-hitting show in talk radio. The true progressive voice since 2012. This is Southpaws.
And welcome to Southpaws on the Pacifica Radio Network. We are the leaders of the revolution. I'm Darren Gibson.
I'm Katy Steele.
And Jack Prince is on vacation. I believe he just got back, but he's going to take an extra day or two off just to kind of unwind from a vacation. I know what he means, because, man, traveling is awful.
There's always so much extra work. You try to take a vacation, but you come back more tired than you left. So, totally agree.
Yeah, absolutely. Boy, have we got a lot of things to talk about today. We have a four-hammer winner today. So we'll get to those four in a little bit. We got to talk about an update to Dave Ramsey. A couple of things have popped up since then. Right now, before we get started on today's show, reminders, you can follow us on social media by going to facebook.com/Southpaws Radio Show, at Twitter at Southpaws Radio, Tumblr at southpawsradioshow.tumblr.com, YouTube by doing a search for Southpaws Radio. You can become a patron of the show by going to patreon.com/Southpaws Radio. You can listen to the show anytime you like at Spreaker.com or at Stitcher.com. Just do a search for Southpaws there. You can find us on Apple Podcasts by doing a search for Southpaws. Once you found our logo, you found us. We send links to our weekly episodes to our Facebook, Twitter, Tumblr, and YouTube accounts. You can listen to us on Global Community Radio Channel 1 every Saturday night at 11 Eastern. And you can listen to us on great Pacifica stations, including KCEI in Taos, New Mexico, KZGM in Kabul, Missouri, WOOL in Bellows Falls, Vermont, KEPJ in San Antonio, Texas. And I want to give a special shout out. Last week's show was downloaded by KOPN 89.5 FM, Mid-Missouri's independent community radio in Columbia, Missouri. So thank you for downloading last week's show. We hope you join us for the weeks to come. And then we have an update from a couple of weeks ago. You were talking about the petroleum company out of Ford Airport. We got the name for it after we got off the air. It is Anadarko Petroleum.
Thank you. I can never pronounce that, Anadarko. I actually stumbled across to them when I was researching local utility installations, like infrastructure stuff. And then I realized they had just built a huge spot over by the airport there.
Yeah, I'm not sure what's up with that airport spot, but planes have got to have jet fuel, so I don't know if it's got something to do with that or what's going on.
There's a lot of defense stuff going on over there.
Anadarko is organized in Delaware. The headquarters is Woodlands, Texas.
Organized in Delaware doesn't necessarily mean they're not friends with other people, too.
Yeah, because
have homes in other places.
A lot of companies organize in Delaware because they pay low income taxes there as far as corporate. That's why
I believe there's 4 states, right, that are organized super well. Delaware, Nevada.
Nevada's another one.
Sure what the other 2 are.
That's why you'll find a lot of credit card companies based out of Delaware, even though they're headquartered somewhere else. Another town is Carroll Stream, Illinois. You'll find a lot of credit card companies there.
I have to apologize for us talking over one another. We're on the phone today because, COVID keeps us apart every other minute lately. But we're trying to make it work, so forgive us for constantly talking at the same time. It's really hard when you can't see each other's face.
Yeah, I know, and it's kind of hard to do Skype. We actually probably could have video called each other, but with the technology.
But you don't want to look at me right now. It's rough.
Oh, whatever. Oh, boy. Yeah, well.
So that's good to know. I actually, because we were talking about the other company that sounded like that, Anaconda, is that?
I believe so. That was the mining company that Jack was talking about 2 weeks ago.
Yeah. I didn't get a picture of it, but just yesterday I was following a huge industrial piece of equipment, and that was what it was called. And it may or may not be related, but I just thought it was interesting. I meant to look that up yesterday.
Yeah, Jack was talking about the Anaconda Copper Mining Company, which is part of Amalgamated Copper.
Yeah, actually, that makes sense then if they were affiliated, because it definitely looked like something that was mining something like copper.
Yeah. Oh, man. Boy, I have had a rough week. I'm going to tell you that we are recording this show on Friday, April 9th, 2021. I have pretty much decided to give up on my middle brother. Him and I got into an argument yesterday about politics and religion. It got really ugly. You should have heard some of the stuff he was saying, Katie. You would just look at him and go, what the hell?
Give me some background on your little brother.
Well, he's not my little brother. He's my middle brother. He's 10 years older than me. Yeah, he's 10 years older than me.
So what type of area did he grow up in? A rural area, and what type of work does he do? I wonder what types of people are in this mindset,
Yeah. Well, it's not even where he grew up or anything like that. I can tell you why he got the way he did. It's his church. Bottom line, period, End of story. The Christian Reformed Church brainwashed his ass.
Okay. Was this a church that was in, what sort of area? Was it rural or was it more inner city? Because I know they're everywhere. Not that it makes a difference, but I'm just trying to visualize it.
Oh, it's rural.
Okay.
Yeah. Just the things, the thing that got me really, that blew me up yesterday was him talking about George Floyd having drugs in the system. I said, what does it matter? I don't care if he had a ton of drugs in the system. You don't put your knee on somebody's neck for 9 minutes and think they're going to survive. That's just common sense. Unfortunately, we don't have that with the police anymore. Here's what kind of started it. I'm going to read you this article. This is Lee Moran writing for Huffington Post. This is dated April 8th. Actor George Clooney dished out some brutal advice for the prosecution of former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin, the attorney for George Floyd's family said on Wednesday's episode of The View. Lawyer Benjamin Crump recalled Clooney lamenting in an email that Chauvin's defense lawyers are suggesting that drugs, and not the 9 minutes and 29 seconds that Chauvin pressed his knee against Floyd's neck, caused Floyd's death in May 2020. Crump remembered Clooney writing to him this way, quote, he says, Attorney Crump, you should tell them that if Derek Chauvin feels so confident in that, he should volunteer during his case to get down on the floor in that courtroom and let somebody come and put their knee on his neck for 9 minutes and 29 seconds and be able to see if he can survive. End of quote. Hey, Clooney's got the right idea.
And what it sounds like your middle brother is saying is not that he thought that he could be, get away with putting his knee on his neck, but that he didn't care that the guy got murdered. What he's saying is he should get murdered because he had drugs in the system.
Yeah,
right. That's basically the point they're making.
Black Lives Matter's a bunch of terrorists. Black people are more racist than anybody.
Yeah, it's getting out of control so fast.
Mm-hmm. I just finally lost it yesterday, and I couldn't take any more. My mom's had enough of them too. We both have had enough of them. And here's the thing: he grew up in a union family, grew up in a Democratic family, voted Democratic for years. When he gets to the church, it's, we got to push the conservative thought down his throat.
We've seen the church and the political parties be so hypocritical that doesn't surprise me at all that he would grow up as a Democrat and end up like this. You know what I mean? Basically, I think the Democratic Party and the church radicalize people in reality. It's not the ones they call radicals. We're the sane ones. But these people are being radicalized by these machines. You know what I mean? It's insane. This narrative has changed so dramatically since I was a kid. I grew up in the woods out in Greenville, in Gowan, Michigan, specifically. Gowan. It was 2 square miles of all woods and a bunch of cottages. People that couldn't really afford huge pieces of land who lived there.
I had an aunt and uncle that lived in Gowan for a number of years.
Yeah, we lived pretty much year-round in lake cottages. And it was a really poor community. But, those people, there was a lot of racism there, but we weren't necessarily aware of it. And there wasn't hate. I did not grow up around hateful people. They were ignorant to the fact that there was a systematic racism problem. They did think that Black people who didn't do well or who couldn't find success, that they had some sort of, lack of will or drive. There was definitely that narrative. But I didn't hear the hate out of that community. Now the vitriol is so different. And I think you're right. You have to get to a point where even in family, you have to say no.
Yeah.
Like, this is not acceptable.
Exactly. And one thing that really got me going, we started talking about dictatorships and do you want a dictator? Do you want an authoritarian figure running this country? Like Trump, because he's a big Trump supporter. He's a Trump tard. Sorry, I'll say it on the air. I don't give a fuck. But the thing is, the thing is that he then says, oh, well, I don't want the country run by a bunch of people that burned down a police precinct in Portland.
Actually, you do. Actually, you do. Otherwise, you end up in the police precinct in Portland, and there's nobody to help you.
Absolutely. So we got talking about somehow the topic turned to slavery. Here's his justification. He asked me. Now, he made his mistake by asking me. You ask me my opinion, you'll get it from me. I don't care. He says, so who has all the slaves in the country? I looked right at him. I said, well, the oligarchs do.
The American prison system, but yeah, they're not all in prison, so you're right.
No, we are all slaves to rich people. We are.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
And he doesn't see that. His idea of slavery is the pimps that own the prostitutes. And who owns all the prostitutes? It ain't white people.
Yeah, it's not like a prostitute could own herself.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
I know.
I hate people sometimes.
Well, I told him I hated him yesterday. I did. We got really heated. I lost the track of the amount of times I told him, fuck you. I told him I hated him. I told him I hope he burns in hell. I'm tired. I'm done. As far as I'm concerned, I have one brother, not two. I have somebody that kind of looks like me, kind of sounds like me, that's 10 years older, that carries the same DNA. But he ain't family. Not anymore.
Oh, shit. I'll remember that if I see somebody that kind of looks like you.
Yeah.
Run. It looks kind of like Darren, not Darren.
And just to put the kicker on everything, after I'm having a meltdown that almost turned physical, by the way, he decided he was leaving. He had enough of me and Mom and whatever else. And my mom's trying to explain to him, hey, you got to understand, Darren's got mental illness. You know what his reply was? I have mental illness too. Yeah.
So he doesn't expect any kind of empathy for himself when he needs it?
No, he doesn't have mental illness.
Oh, okay.
He was basically downplaying my mental illness. So I've got two words for you. F*** you. Bottom line, I hate people that downplay other people's mental illness. I hate them.
Yeah, I just think there's no room for people without empathy. You gotta have empathy, man.
And he has none. He has empathy for himself. That's it. He's selfish.
Narcissism.
I'll tell you what. I'll give my opinion here. I don't care what anybody believes. This is the same guy that goes down to the Kent County Jail every other weekend and preaches to the prisoners there. You want to know why he does it? No. Let me give you my opinion of why he does it. He doesn't do it for them. He does it to make himself feel good.
Yeah, to make himself feel better than everybody.
Absolutely.
That's what all those people do. I mean, there's a few good ones, I think Jeff Smith used to go in and do good work there, but a lot of them, it's for their own ego. It's for their own accolades. It's really disgusting.
It is. It absolutely is. Well, I don't have to put up with it anymore. I told my mom I want nothing to do with him in the future. That's until the day I drop, and even beyond that. I'm still angry. I'm shaking. I couldn't sleep last night, and I'm shaking right now talking about it.
Oh, yeah. There are people I cut out of my life because I don't need that toxic energy. And once I know who you are, you show me who you are, you don't got to show me again. I'm just going to believe you the first time.
Yep. He has been a bully to me my entire life, and I've had enough.
Good for you. Well, congratulations.
Yeah.
I guess we don't have to waste any more breath talking about that waste of space then.
Yeah. Speaking of other wastes of space, I might as well just play the music here.
Stop! Hammer time!
Oh, yeah. It's hammer time. It's time to drop the hammer on the douchebag of the week, and we've got 4 winners this week. 3 of them are all interrelated to each other. This is something else. Let me go to the first one here. This is Kyle Mantilla writing for Right Wing Watch, which is a great website. They keep an eye on everybody on the right, especially televangelist Jim Bakker.
Oh, there's a real winner. That might be a hard job to do. You'd have to pay me a lot to sit around watching him.
Yeah. So here are winners 1 through 3. Winner number 1, right-wing pastor Jim Bakker, the Pride of Muskegon. Winner number 2, right-wing conspiracy theorist Steve Quayle. Winner number 3, right-wing conspiracy theorist Tom Horn. What do they all have in common? Well, Quayle and Horn were recently on Jim Bakker's show, and I've actually got a clip of one of these. This is the clip of Quayle. This happened, I believe, on Monday or Tuesday. For years, right-wing pastor Jim Bakker has been using his daily television program to terrify his audience into believing that the end times are upon us, often for the apparent purpose of selling them products designed to help them survive the apocalypse. Bakker kicked things up a notch on Tuesday's program, which featured right-wing conspiracy theorist Steve Quayle warning about aliens, demons, transdimensional beings, and, quote, diseases that are designed to initiate cannibalism in human beings, end of quote, and turn them into literal zombies. But don't take our word for it, because we have the audio. Here it is.
Earth are a disease like any other disease that affects people, and they become like zombies. Mm-hmm. Is that right?
By the way, that is Jim Bakker right there. Let me continue the audio.
Forgive me, but that's only part of the story. Zombies also have the evil spiritual entity known as demon possession, okay? Because there is no rationale with a zombie. The best way to explain zombies' bloodlust is this: the appetite of demons expressed through humans. It should be astonishing to people that the richest people in the world, not all of them, but some of them, are into occult ceremonies where they have to drink, blood that's extracted from a tortured child. Now, that's sick, but that's the appetite of demons expressed through humans. The ancient world dealt with monsters, mythological and real. And this is something that is really important to get through. The disease will basically destroy the human defenses. God gave us defenses as humans to resist the devil and he will flee. But when you're inviting, or what's the word I want? Embracing abject demon possession, giving yourself over to be inhabited by the demons who then become your inhabitants, it's a twofold. What I'm saying, Jim, is they can induce zombieism, at least the appetite for human flesh. But at the end of the thing, it's both hands, right hand and left hand. And the left hand simply is the evil spiritual possession of that zombie. So the zombie protocol, and then I think people should say, okay, if this is all wild stuff, why does the military have a manual about it when it happens? Why does the CDC even have anything on their members, Center for Disease Control or Creation? I just call it that. That's my opinion. The whole subject of zombies could be just boiled down at one end to a genetically modified human that is no longer human on the level that you and I or a living being is. Then that corpse, that walking and animated, there's a better word, it's not living. An animated corpse is possessed by a demonic entity. That demonic entity has knowledge, it has sentience, it has, how do I say this, a purpose to do nothing else but to destroy. And I think that's the easiest way I can explain it.
Yeah, go ahead.
That is so twisted. There's two things that stood out to me immediately. Two things. Phrases, marketing phrases that he just threw out there. Okay, the first one is trans-dimensional beings. trans-dimensional beings. He was trying to say like 3 dimensions, right? But he used the word trans on purpose.
Oh God!
Because he's pulling in transsexuals too, right?
Unless he's
making them these monsters.
Unless he's thinking that there are beings that can transport themselves from one dimension to another. Yes. Maybe that's it. I have no idea.
He's inducing fear. The second thing he said, though, like, it's all about the fear, right? But he's saying demons, or he's saying, how did I already not lose the word he was just saying? But basically what I was hearing was that commies. That's what he's referring to. Liberals, commies are all monsters, right? But he called us genetically modified humans. He pulled out another phrase that will not be the last time you hear it. I guarantee you this. He's marketing something right now. Genetically modified human. It's like GMOs, but people. And he's labeling the last GMOs. Toxic, poisonous, man-made, fake, synthetic. That's what he's making us. Like, this is so sick. And those are the marketing campaigns. Along with speeches like that, those data companies are throwing these headlines at people. You know, and that's how your brother lost his goddamn mind.
Yeah, well, this gets better. This is, again, Kyle Mantilla writing for Right Wing Watch. This is April 8th. While televangelist Jim Bakker's daily television program has always been a repository for misinformation, baseless conspiracy theories, and end times fear-mongering, his show has gotten decidedly stranger in recent days. Earlier this week, Bakker interviewed right-wing conspiracy theorist Steve Quayle, who spent 2 programs warning about aliens, demons, trans-dimensional beings, and diseases that are designed to initiate cannibalism in human beings and turn them into literal zombies. On the heels of those programs, Bakker interviewed end times conspiracy theorist Tom Horn, who warned that an asteroid will strike the Earth in 2029, unleashing an alien virus that will give rise to the Antichrist. Unfortunately, I don't have the audio for this, but on Thursday's program, Horn discussed his recent book called The Wormwood Prophecy, which claims that the government is covering up the fact that an asteroid known as Apophis will strike the Earth in 2029. While scientists say that Apophis will simply pass by our planet in 2029, Horn insists that it will actually strike the Earth and fulfill the prophecy in Revelation 8. The third angel sounded his trumpet, and a great star, blazing like a torch, fell from the sky on a third of the rivers and on the springs of water. The name of the star is Wormwood. A third of the waters had turned bitter, and many people died from the waters that had become bitter. This is in Revelations. I don't know, because I don't believe that horse shit.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, it sounds to me like another huge campaign to distract and divert people's attention from the fact that they don't even have until 2029. Climate change is going to take you out long before an asteroid. Dummy.
Yep.
I don't know what else to tell them, but they're all like, oh no, this could happen or that. And I'm like, oh yeah, well, you're worried about that? You're going to be taken out by everything else. So good luck.
Here's what Horn said on the program. Quote, I believe Apophis is the asteroid that is talked about in the book of Revelation, chapter 8. It is what is called wormwood in the Bible. I believe that Apophis is carrying an alien microorganism on it in which a virus is being sustained. I believe it's going to make coronavirus look like a walk in the park. On impact with the Earth, the contagion that is going to be brought to this planet, I think that it's going to be a trigger event that ultimately leads to the mark of the beast, which will mean that you're going to have to be vaccinated.
Like, you can't make this stuff up. He's like, don't worry about this pandemic. It doesn't matter because there's a really big one coming in 10 years.
But he continues. He continues, quote, a contagion during the tribulation period could sweep the world. Literally tens of millions of people are dying by the hour, and an international cry goes up around the world for some kind of cure, a vaccine. Well, a man comes forward, a single individual who happens to be the Antichrist, and he's the only man on Earth whose blood is naturally immune to this alien virus. And so a vaccine is created from his blood by which all mankind then are required to be inoculated. So it's almost like a black communion. End of quote.
Oh, wow. That ending there.
Yeah. Oh, here's my thoughts on all that. I'll just say it. I don't care if every station kicks me off the air. If you believe in this book of fiction written 2,000 years ago by men to control other men and all women, you need to be in the psych ward. Period. End of story.
Yeah. Honestly, if you're just willing to take somebody's word for it with no evidence, I've got some land to sell you in Florida.
Yeah. You might not be able to get the vaccine, though, depending on where that land is.
Oh, trust me, the people that are going to buy it won't want the vaccine. So
yeah, that's very true. So there's the top three. We have an edition that was a late edition, thanks to our longtime listener, Pat, who sent this to me this morning. I have this story. This is Josh Chesler writing for Spin Magazine. This is dated April 8th. The COVID-19 pandemic did a pretty good job showing which musicians, celebrities, friends, and family members believe in science and which prefer conspiracy theories. But on the scale that tops out around Van Morrison, Ted Nugent is in a league of his own. Hey, let me stop here. Josh, don't compare a rock god like Van Morrison to a douchebag like Ted Nugent. Don't do it.
Oh, that was really kind of gross.
Yeah. Let me continue here. Long known as the rock and roll's uncle, whom you wouldn't want to be stuck next to at the Thanksgiving table, the guitar legend and borderline right-wing extremist, I'll eliminate borderline, he is a right-wing extremist, hit the conspiracy-friendly forum of Facebook Live, which was transcribed by the rock website Blabbermouth, on Thursday to ponder one of the hardest questions. I think it might have been on Wednesday. To ponder one of the hardest questions for those who don't have a basic knowledge of science or recent etymology. Quote, why were there no shutdowns for COVID 1 through 18? End of quote. Of course, the factual...
He's got a real problem. Hey,
yeah.
Ted Nugent's got a real problem with anything over 18, doesn't he?
He most certainly does. Let's see.
Trying to focus on everything underneath it. Yeah.
Let's see.
Shocking.
This is the guy that has had songs titled Jailbait, Little Miss Dangerous, and Cat Scratch Fever. So there you go.
Pedophile, pervert, bigot. I got other words for the ignorant trash, but
there you
we'll
go.
leave it at that.
Let me continue here. Of course, the factual answer to that question is that there never was a COVID-1, COVID-18, or any other COVID number before, because the 19 in COVID-19 stands for the year 2019 in which it was discovered. But that doesn't matter to the Nuge, who blamed production companies for canceling his tour plans for the year before calling them, quote, dirty bastard, lying, scam, smoke and mirrors, COVID-19 freaks, end of quote. That's a mouthful there. Dirty
to no one.
Here's what else he said. Quote, I would ask you, because I'm addicted to truth, logic, and common sense, and my common sense meter would demand the answer to, why weren't we shut down for COVID 1 through 18? End of quote.
Let's talk about your common sense meter there.
Yeah, common...
Douchebag, that's what we're calling him, douchebag.
Truth, logic, and common sense left old Deadly Tedley years ago. By the way...
you need that?
By the way...
somebody to do that stuff for you.
Yeah. By the way, when he was doing this on his Facebook Live, apparently he was wearing a robe that looks like it could be from the Joe Exotic collection.
Of course. His 12-year-old girlfriend was hiding in the closet.
He continues, quote, there was a COVID 1 and there was a COVID 2, 3, 4, 5, and he goes on. COVID 1 through 18 didn't shut anything down, but whoa, COVID-19, even though it's 99.8% survivable, why didn't we shut down for the AIDS epidemic or the flu or the Spanish flu or the bird flu or the West Nile flu or influenza every year? End of quote. Obviously, somebody hasn't read their history.
Because we sure did.
We shut down for the Spanish flu in 1918. What an idiot.
Oh, we did in-home quarantine, dummy. Wow.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, that was another argument that my brother had yesterday was, 99% are surviving. Why is this a big deal? So my supposedly intelligent brother is a science denier too, as well as everything else that I mentioned earlier.
Right. Keep in mind, though, I mean, the people who are dying are minorities, and he's already explained that he doesn't care if they die. He thinks they all deserve to die.
And let me correct myself, former brother, because he ain't nothing to me
the
anymore.
The guy with the same mom as you.
Yeah, same mom and same dad. Yeah. Continuing, in addition to being clueless about both the naming of COVID-19 and the historical impact of plagues like the Spanish flu, Nugent also recited one of his favorite passages of the conspiracy theorist playbook by doubting the actual death toll from the disease. Quote, they claim 500,000 people have died from COVID-19. Bullshit. I believe that medical examiners in all 50 states have gone, I put down on the death certificate that he died of asphyxiation, but they made me put COVID. Well, this guy was stabbed to death, but they made me put down COVID. This guy was run over by a tandem gravel truck doing a four-wheel drift, and the crows be pecking at your flesh, but they made me put down COVID-19. End of quote. Wow.
Oh, my gosh. So this is where all the crazies in the news articles, whenever somebody dies of anything, they go, oh, must have been COVID.
Mm-hmm. Of course, there's a reason that Nugent is not a doctor. Hell, the closest he's been to the medical field is probably being on the first page of Google results for cat scratch fever, although after several medical sites. But you can still watch the nonsense-filled Facebook Live video if you want to see how off the rail he's gone. We suggest you don't do that. And because we had to talk about Ted Nugent, I want to play a clip that's several years old. Keith Olbermann, on his countdown show on Current TV, one night gave Ted Nugent winner of worst person in the world. Here's the audio.
But our winner has been rocker Ted Nugent. In his Washington Times column, seriously, Ted Nugent's political column, he writes of the Occupy movement, while I don't condone violence, watching the cops pounce on and pepper spray a few Occupy stooges and then drag the dirt balls off to jail in shackles is good for my conservative soul and gold for my sense of humor. Everyone needs at least one hearty laugh every day. You have to admit that watching a stinky, dirty hippie being dragged off to jail is as funny as watching Mo hit Larry and Curly with a pipe wrench. This is funny stuff, lighten up. One visual reminder here is necessary. This is Nugent on the cover of Cat Scratch Fever, his last mediocre record from 1977. He really wrote stinking, dirty hippie about somebody else after making a reputation as one? Asshole.
I love how Keith threw that right in at the very end.
Oh, my favorite. I have a Facebook friend who's, I don't know if they're still in litigation. I'm going to read his quote. He was actually discussing the AG hopeful Tom Leonard at the time, but he was comparing him to Ted Nugent, and it's like my favorite Facebook quote ever. He said, this pencil-necked state rep and AG hopeful ain't no rocker. Nathan Medina wrote in a Facebook post, but I wonder, does the worst speaker of the Michigan House of Representatives in a generation have a thirst for jailbait like Theodore Nugent? And of course, that ended up getting him fired as a lobbyist, and now he's a lawsuit against Tom Leonard. yes,
he has. And by the way, shout out to Nathan Medina, who is a listener of our show. So
don't tell him I complimented him. I didn't know he might hear this.
Oh yeah. Oh man. So to our winners this week: Jim Bakker, Steve Quayle, Tom Horn, and Ted Nugent. We have this message for you.
Don't be a douchebag.
Yeah, that's right. Hey, you four need to stop being douchebags. Probably stop being conservatives would be better, but that's never going to happen.
Right. Go back to church.
Yeah.
We'll know where to find you.
There you go. Oh, speaking of the church, we have an update to something we talked about last week, and it has to do with Dave Ramsey. So we talked about Ramsey last week because he's getting sued by a former employee. She claims that he fired her for getting pregnant after she, quote-unquote, violated some sort of Christian policy that they have there that you cannot engage in premarital sex or in extramarital affairs. If you do, you're fired. So we have this story. This is Bob Smetana writing for the Roy's Report. I've never heard of the Roy's Report. You can find it at julieroys.com. The banner on the site says, "Reporting the Truth, Restoring the Church." So apparently they're not into all this funny stuff that a lot of these pastors and whatever are into. So again, this is Bob Smetana writing for the Roy's Report, and Bob happens to be, he is a national reporter for the Religion News Service, which I didn't know existed. So here's the story he has. The company owned by Christian financial guru and radio host Dave Ramsey is no longer one of the best places to work in America, according to Inc. magazine. The national business publication dropped the Franklin, Tennessee-based Ramsey Solutions from its 2020 Best Workplaces list after the company was sued by a former employee, Caitlin O'Connor, for discrimination. O'Connor claims she was fired from Ramsey Solutions after applying for family leave because she was pregnant. Her lawsuit claims Ramsey Solutions, quote, discriminates against employees who do not strictly adhere to Ramsey's interpretation of Judeo-Christian values for non-work-related behavior, end of quote. In court documents, Ramsey Solutions said O'Connor, who is not married, was fired for having premarital sex, which violated the company's righteous living policy.
Are we certain it's not his baby? I mean, is he just upset that she didn't abort it?
I'm going to say that it's not.
These are legitimate questions, because until I see a DNA test, I got to wonder why. Or did she just refuse to put out to him? And he's like, listen, if she's going to have extramarital sex or premarital sex, it should be with me.
Well,
because that's some man stuff right there.
Well, there's a little more to this. Let me continue here. Okay. In a March filing, Ramsey's lawyer said, quote, there is no dispute that plaintiff was aware of this rule and terminated for violating it. End of quote. The company also said that since 2016, it has disciplined 8 other employees, both men and women, for having premarital sex. After learning of the lawsuit... Oh, what was that?
I'm just laughing. Like, that doesn't rule out that he's the father of all of them or that they all turned him down. I'm just thinking out loud.
After learning of the lawsuit, Inc. dropped Ramsey Solutions from the Best Workplaces list. Assistant editor Sophie Downs wrote in announcing the decision, quote, Ramsey has the right to manage its business in accordance with its values, and the court system will determine the merits of the lawsuit. Upon learning about the company's righteous living policy and how it is applied, we believe that it is incompatible with our standards of organizational excellence and have made the editorial decision to remove the company from our 2020 Best Workplaces list. End of quote. About 3,000 companies applied to be included on Inc. magazine's annual Best Workplaces list. The list seeks to recognize companies where people love to work, one that sets the standard for excellence in company. That is, again, according to Inc. magazine. Ramsey Solutions did not reply to a request for comment. The company, which employs about 900 people, has received millions in tax breaks for expanding its headquarters and promising to create hundreds of new jobs.
That never appear.
Yeah.
Generally.
Yeah. Dave Ramsey and other leaders have told employees the company relies on being named to the Best Workplaces list as a recruiting tool. That is according to a recording of a staff meeting discussing the surveys obtained by a religious news service. Leaders also warned employees that if they can't answer surveys that put the company in a positive light, they should leave. So if you can't say nice things about me, yeah, I was going to say, if you can't say nice things about me, you need to go.
I wouldn't want to work for a place I can't say nice things about. And I wouldn't want somebody working for me if they couldn't. So
absolutely. Ramsey, whose Financial Peace University materials are used by thousands of churches, has been at the center of controversy over the past year for his comments about the COVID-19 pandemic. From the beginning, he has downplayed the threat of the coronavirus and called mask wearing a sign of fear and required all employees to work in the office. During a staff meeting last year, Ramsey also threatened to fire an employee who filed an OSHA complaint against the company's response to COVID-19. The company held a large-scale, mostly maskless, in-person Christmas party. I'm going to stop there real quick. Let me just remind everybody, if you threaten to fire an employee who filed an OSHA complaint against you, That is against the law. It is illegal. It is called the Whistleblower Act. You will get sued. You will lose.
And this is assuming you have a decent attorney. Just keep in mind, we're in a world where, yeah, it's totally illegal, but, I mean, OSHA doesn't keep us safe anymore, and a lot of people won't take anybody's case. Like, our worker protections are not what they used to be, so if we wanted to stay that way, we actually have to go out and stand up for ourselves now.
Yeah.
I mean, you can find them. There's Jeffrey Figers that'll take on cases, and maybe you'll be able to win it, but we have to actually start standing up for ourselves, because I was really grossed out by how bad OSHA's response was to the pandemic.
Oh, yeah.
There was nothing.
Yeah.
They literally told every single person, if you are not about to fall over and croak from the virus itself right now, you better be at work. What?
Mm-hmm.
That is not what we set that agency up for.
Yeah. Ramsey recently filmed a video in support of a law that would label mask mandates as discriminatory. His company is also suing a Florida resort, claiming the hotel's enforcement of mask bans cost Ramsey millions in revenue when they had to cancel a conference. The financial guru has long defended his company's moral code, saying it is needed to create a godly work atmosphere. No, let me stop there. You need to separate religion from the workplace. Unless you're working for a church, it needs to be separated. Period.
They're trying to install fascism, though, and they really need religion to do so.
Absolutely.
That's where we're at.
Ramsey Solutions recently cut ties with Chris Hogan, a high-profile employee who was seen as a possible successor to Ramsey. In a video announcement posted in March, Hogan said he had, quote, done some things personally that are not in line with Ramsey Solutions, end of quote, and had left the company. So there's that.
Wow.
In a statement issued by the company after Hogan left, they said, quote, this week, new information came to light that Chris Hogan has recently done some things personally that are not in line with Ramsey Solutions' core values. As a result of his current actions and behavior, Chris Hogan is no longer a team member at Ramsey or a Ramsey personality, end of quote. Before his firing, wow. Ramsey and other company leaders had long known of allegations of misconduct against Hogan. Hogan's ex-wife, Melissa Hogan, said she came to Ramsey leadership in November 2018 with allegations that Chris had been unfaithful to her. Hogan has since admitted to at least 2 affairs, including one with a co-worker at Ramsey Solutions.
That's funny. And I'm not even laughing because I believe in the sanctity of marriage. I'm just laughing because everybody who tries to uphold the sanctity of marriage are the same ones that violate it every single time. It cracks me up.
At a May 2019 staff meeting, Ramsey told his employees, quote, if you are worrying about our integrity and leadership and are we covering up for Hogan because he is a big brand, the answer is no. No. End of quote. But the situation drew criticism that the company's moral codes were selectively enforced. Hogan left the company not long after O'Connor's attorney had requested copies of his personal file as part of the discovery for the lawsuits.
He was like, time to go now. Now is the time to get out the back door now.
Well, before all this hit the fan, another article was published by this website. This is Jackson Elliott writing again for the Roy's Report. This is dated late February. Christian personal finance guru Dave Ramsey just listed his mountain mansion near Nashville for $15.45 million. The 6-bedroom Mountain View estate commands 14.38 fenced-in acres with vacant lots on all sides, according to the Redfin property listing. Ramsey is selling the home with 14,000 square feet of living space, fully furnished. The home's luxury features include 3 staircases, 5 fireplaces, an elevator, its own private water source, and an advanced air filtration system. The property is...
This sounds like a perfect place to launch the revolution. I think we got a new home base.
Absolutely. The property has 9 bathrooms, including one with a reported 18 shower heads.
Yeah, we're in.
The outside of the house is as palatial as the inside, with 6,000 square feet of covered outdoor space. Its features include patios, porches, and terraces, Its driveway encircles a fountain and connects to 3 garages with space for 8 cars. For entertainment, it has an infinity edge pool and spa, as well as several other entertaining spaces. The house is strategically placed so its residents can watch the sunset from the pool in the back. Brentwood-based Capital Realty Group, led by Ramsey's son-in-law, Winston Cruz, has the listing. That is according to the Nashville Business Journal.
Capital Realty Group, so probably Capital One Bank, I'm guessing.
Oh. Ramsey Solutions spokeswoman Megan McConnell told the Business Journal that Ramsey and his wife Sharon plan to build on land they own south of the city. The Ramseys paid nearly $1.6 million cash for the property in 2008, according to Realtor.com.
Oh, my gosh, that's pennies.
So it most certainly is. We'll get to that in just a second here. At least he took his own advice and he didn't get a mortgage.
Of course not. Oh, wow. Why would he finance his own bank? That's what we're here for.
Yeah. Ramsey Solutions, one of the largest employers in Williamson County, Tennessee, employs over 800 people. Dave Ramsey hosts the 3rd largest radio talk show in America, The Ramsey Show, heard by more than 14 million listeners each week on more than 600 radio stations. You know who number 1 and 2 are?
Who's that?
Number 1, Rush Limbaugh. Number 2, Sean Hannity.
Oh, yeah. Okay. That's a star lineup right there.
Lately, Ramsey has been the focus of controversy for allegedly bullying employees, exerting a cult-like control over them, and flagrantly violating COVID-19 precautions. Ramsey also made controversial comments on the air about stimulus checks. He told Fox Propaganda Channel that if $600 or $1,400 changes someone's life, they are, quote, screwed already, end of quote. By the way, Realtor.com pegs Ramsey's net worth as $475 million.
Is that all?
Yep. Dave Ramsey and his palatial estate, because he wants to build a bigger one. Unbelievable.
I'm just like, we only need to move into 2 of their properties, and we've got enough resources and space to actually organize a takeover of what belongs to humanity. We're running out of time, so we might want to start working on this soon.
Yeah. You know what? I've got a definition of irony for you right here. This is the same guy that said, money is like manure. If you spread it around, things grow. If you let it pile up, it starts to stink. What do you call $475 million?
I would call that hoarding wealth.
I'd call it a pile of manure.
Yep. I would call him a pile of manure.
Absolutely. Oh, boy. Speaking of piles of manure, I want to get to this story. This is Julia Rock and Andrew Perez writing for the Daily Poster. This was published to Newsweek magazine. This is dated April 5th. Big restaurant chains are telling investors that a national minimum wage hike would not be a big deal, even as their corporate lobbying groups in Washington fight plans for a $15 minimum wage. The National Restaurant Association wrote in a letter to congressional leaders in February, quote, "We share your view that a national discussion on wage issues for working Americans is needed, but the Raise the Wage Act is the wrong bill at the wrong time for our nation's restaurants. The restaurant industry and our workforce will suffer from a fast-tracked wage increase and elimination of the tip credit," end of quote.
I agree.
The following day, a top executive at Denny's, one of the association's members, told investors that gradual increases in the minimum wage have not been a problem for the company at all. In fact, California's law raising the minimum wage to $15 by the year 2023 has actually been good for the diner chain's business. That's according to Denny's Chief Financial Officer, Robert Verostek. Right there it is, black and white.
Yep, they're paying us less, and if we're getting less tips, people are buying more from the restaurants. Guys, do not let them eliminate the tip system. This has been such a frustrating argument for me because people do not understand how manipulated we're being. If they take that away, it's held so many families barely above water for the last 2 decades. We'd be in a completely different situation.
On an earnings call, Verostek said, quote, "As they've increased their minimum wage kind of in a tempered pace over that time frame, If you look at that time frame from us, California has outperformed the system. Over that time frame, they had 6 consecutive years of positive guest traffic, not just positive sales, but positive guest traffic as the minimum wage was going up, end of quote. Denny's is one of several publicly traded restaurant chains whose executives have told investors in recent months that Democrats' proposed minimum wage hike is not a real threat to their business and may even be a net positive. That's according to a Daily Poster review of corporate earnings calls. All of the companies have historically belonged to the Restaurant Association, which has led the fight against the Raise the Wage Act, legislation from Democrats that would gradually increase the minimum wage to $15 by the year 2025. By the way, the National Restaurant Association has declined the Daily Poster's request for comment.
Well, they've got a conflict of interest because their industry is the only one that literally will not be affected by the initial raise, right? Because they're using front of the house employees' tips to pay each other. And that's how they're getting through this right now. They're not paying their front of house, really. But people in the restaurant industry, we're in a stage of oligarchy now where they're in every other industry. And it will affect them in their other industries. So I think that's why it's, they're on both sides of the fence here.
Exactly. By the way, the National Restaurant Association spent $2.6 million on federal lobbying in the year 2020. Other trade associations that have lobbied against a wage hike include the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, the National Small Business Association as well. That is, again...
Can I stop you?
Yeah.
The Chamber of Commerce, right there. You take a look right there and you look at the people on your local Chamber of Commerce and look at where their hands are, where their money is. That's where you'll see it. That's where you see that this mix of restaurants and the other industries is, they're holding each other's hands. And so, like I said, you might be able to handle a wage increase in the restaurant business. It'll actually help them. Their customers will be giving more money to the restaurant versus their servers. Their servers will be making less. But every other industry, it will definitely affect their bottom line in the beginning.
In January, McDonald's CEO Chris Kempczynski told investors the company developed quite a bit of experience with minimum wage hikes at the state level, and they haven't been a problem. He said, quote, "Our view is the minimum wage is most likely going to be increasing, whether that's federally or at the state level, as I referenced, and so long as it's done in a staged way and in a way that is equitable for everybody, McDonald's will do just fine through that," end of quote.
He said McDonald's will do just fine?
Yes.
Yeah, no kidding. McDonald's has 8 trillion stores. This is only going to annihilate the small businesses, which is what they want to happen.
Mm-hmm.
The restaurant industry as a whole is going to be okay. Even the big Applebee's, they'll be fine. But when you're talking about the small places that are still dealing with crap from DoorDash, are putting up with pandemic stuff, and now have to raise their minimum wage, they're going to be gone. And that's what these people want to happen. So, so frustrating.
The National Restaurant Association has been saying that restaurants, because they operate on tight margins, rely on tips, and have been hit hard by the pandemic, can't handle a $15 minimum wage and the elimination of the tipped minimum wage. However, on recent earnings calls, executives of restaurant chains that belong to the association have explicitly debunked these talking points when answering questions about how a higher minimum wage would impact business.
So they're not speaking for the little guys? They're only speaking for themselves?
Mm-hmm.
Shocking, right?
Yeah. The association in a January statement said, quote, "Our industry runs on a 3 to 5% pre-tax profit margin in a good year. During a pandemic is not the time to impose a triple-digit increase in labor costs. Far too many restaurants will respond by laying off even more workers or closing their doors for good," end of quote.
That's true.
I'm going to skip around a little bit here. They actually talk about this. I'm going to skip down here. The federal minimum wage for jobs that rely on tips, such as restaurant servers, is currently $2.13, although most states require companies to pay more than that. And by the way, if you don't make enough tips, they're supposed to kick you up to that minimum wage. Most restaurants don't.
Right, and they will tell you it's over an average of 80 hours. So that means if you had enough hours where you made over minimum wage, they'll make you average it out.
Mm-hmm. Let's see. The Raise the Wage Act would phase out the sub-minimum wage by 2025, and then companies will have to pay tipped workers the federal minimum wage. A recent study from the Center for American Progress found that workers who are paid the $2.13 federal tipped minimum wage are more likely to live in poverty than tipped workers in states that have eliminated the sub-minimum wage for such workers. Last summer, the advocacy group One Fair Wage wrote that the sub-minimum wage was becoming an even bigger problem during the COVID-19 pandemic. They wrote, quote, in numerous states around the country, restaurant workers are reporting that tips are down 50 to 70%, end of quote. Nevertheless, the restaurant industry has often tried to argue that ending the tipped wage will be bad for workers and ultimately reduce the amount of money they make. The argument is that customers won't tip as generously if restaurants are forced to raise their prices, or because customers won't feel like restaurant workers need their money as desperately as they do now. The National Restaurant Association, for example, wrote in a press release in January, quote, the elimination of the tip credit will cut the take-home wages of thousands of tipped employees who make far above the proposed minimum hourly wage, end of quote.
I've been very critical of the One Fair Wage campaign, too, because of this issue, because I just don't agree that people are going to tip us the same if we're making full wages. I don't believe that. And I hate that we're in this world where wages are so low that we have to depend on people knowing that and taking care of us. But that's how I raised my kids. Like, I spoke to those people every day. I worked every day for $2 an hour. And I would not have wanted to work for 15 without tips. Like, it would not have been worth it to me. Yeah. I made way more than that with the way it was. So I really think One Fair Wage was working against the industry in a lot of ways. Whether they knew it or not, I don't know, but that was how I felt.
Now, here's the next sentence here. There is no evidence that workers are tipped less in states that have eliminated the minimum wage. Then they go on to cite this. In February, a top executive at the steakhouse chain Texas Roadhouse said on an earnings call that the company's employees have not been losing out on tip money in states like California and Minnesota, where there is no sub-minimum wage for tipped workers, or in Colorado and Arizona, where tip workers must be paid over $9 an hour.
Are they rallying for it? I guess I need to look that up. I want to know if the workers are, because if they know they're making more or the same money, that's what service industry people do. They take care of each other. Yeah. They're the ones organizing for it. So that's what I'm going to look into. Please continue. Sorry.
Yep. Last paragraph. Tanya Robinson, Texas Roadhouse's chief financial officer, said, quote, we don't really see an impact to tips for those servers in those higher wage states. They continue to get tipped well, and their overall average wage is pretty high. End of quote.
Yeah. See, and we weren't telling that guy what we were really making anyway. So we can't listen to him, you know what I mean? That's why it's like we got to really actually go ask these industry people, because that was the thing about making tips. You didn't necessarily have to claim every dollar, and you could actually make enough dollars to feed your family and pay your bills. So.
Yeah. Well, I'm just looking at the clock, and we are completely out of time for this week. So, Katie, thank you for joining me by phone today. I really do appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. Sorry, it's still everything's weird, but hopefully we're getting to a point where things will go back to normal.
Yep, and we'll be back to normal next week. Jack will be returning then. We'll be back next week as well. In the meantime, I'm Darren Gibson.
I'm Katie Steele.
For Jack Prince and Kristen Cook, please support independent media and the First Amendment.
The stations that carry Southpaws do not necessarily share the opinions expressed on the show. Southpaws is protected by the First Amendment to the U.S. Constitution and is copyrighted by Big D Entertainment. All rights reserved.